Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. As you study the Second Coming, inevitably you start to study the Millennium because it's the 1,000-year period that follows the Second Coming. The Second Coming is essentially the dawning of the new day, and this new day that we're about to enter is radically different from the world that we live in right now. Everything from the way that society works to Jesus Christ and the resurrected saints being here, to changes with the planet itself, the continents physically coming together, the atmosphere of the planet changing, and all the things that we've discovered over the course of this channel. Well, one thing that I've been very curious about is what jobs, what careers, what industries are going to disappear, and what new industries and jobs and so forth are going to appear in the Millennium. I created this AI image here. Very well done. I really like the creative crazy chef over here and the creative businesswoman. And then you got the doctor over here with the two stethoscopes with a hard hat and paintbrush. And paintbrushes. So I don't know, maybe he must be a specialist. Maybe that's what's going on here. But I have a spreadsheet where I'm exploring this idea, and today I've expanded it. I've added a column to, like many of my other spreadsheets, to show you what's new in this video. And so I just want to give you the rundown as to what I've added. Okay, so I've added adult right here because undoubtedly, as you can see, I have no references because it's kind of self-explanatory why those jobs would go away. I will say, though, we typically talk about this when we're talking about the economy and money. I don't think that everything is necessarily going to come to an abrupt end. Again, this 1,000-year period is still mortality. You can still choose to keep the commandments or to not keep the commandments. Not everybody is going to instantly become members of the church. You're still going to have all the different belief systems that you have now. The only difference as far as that goes, like the way that people are, is that people that are living a telestial lifestyle are not going to be here anymore. They are the wicked. They're the ones that are going to be destroyed. But believe it or not, people that are living a terrestrial law and a celestial law can also sin. And so I think this will gradually go away over time. There are adult products that are fine to use, obviously, but I think the vast majority of it is eventually going to go away. I guess the question is, how long is it going to take? We've studied that over time, the entire earth, everybody is going to eventually be converted to the church. So certainly by that point, but we'll have to see how that goes. But anything that has to do with this industry, it's probably not, the future's not looking very bright. And then we have butchers, which you could also include down here. I have ranchers, and of course you could also probably do fishermen and stuff like that. Now, this one is sad, but we're going to read from the two Pratt brothers. We're going to go to Elder Orson Pratt of the Quorum of the 12. This is not new on the spreadsheet, but let me just read a little bit of this. Journal of Discourses, Volume 20, page 18. It is then that the enmity of the beasts of the field, as well as that of all flesh, will cease. No more one beast of prey devouring and feasting upon another that is more harmless in its nature. No more will this enmity be found in the fish of the sea or in the birds of the air. Later on, I'm just going to skip down. And Adam and Eve ate fruits and vegetables, not animal flesh. The whole earth will be restored, and man will be restored. And not only upon man, but upon all flesh the Spirit of God will be poured out, and they will eventually be restored to all that was lost by the fall of our first parents. Okay, but there's more. We got this one from Elder Parley P. Pratt. This is from Voice of Warning, pages 134 to 135. I'll just read the highlighted parts. Right here it says, "And their food was all vegetable. Flesh and blood were never sacrificed to glut their souls or gratify their appetites." And then later on, "Thus, having cleansed the earth and glorified it with the knowledge of God, as the waters cover the sea, and having poured out his spirit upon all flesh, both man and beast become perfectly harmless, as they were in the beginning, and feeding on vegetable food only, while nothing is left to hurt or destroy in all the vast creation." The prophets then proceed to give us many glorious descriptions of the enjoyments of its inhabitants. I have another one from Elder Bruce R. McConkie, but this is the one that we usually read, so I wanted to mix it up. So, both humans and animals are no longer going to eat meat. There's not going to be any more carnivores. There's not going to be any more omnivores. It seems like everyone's going to become vegetarian. And that's a very sad thing, I know. I love, all the different types of meat for the most part. I'm not big on seafood, actually, except for crab. But I think that when our bodies change, I don't think that they're going to desire those things anymore, because I think they're going to change in a pretty fundamental, well, I know they're going to change in a really fundamental way. We're about to talk about blood in just a minute, but I don't think you're going to have the appetite for it. And when you think back to how your body was before, you're probably going to think, gross. Okay, education. And by the way, most of what I'm talking about is speculative in nature. We're looking through a glass darkly, so we may only have a general idea of how things are going to play out, but of course we don't know exactly. So as we're about to talk about education, keep that in mind. I wouldn't change your career or let anything that I'm saying here affect your career choice, if you're about to go to school and settle on a major in a career path. But anyway, let me just show you what I have for education. This comes from President Alvin R. Dyer, counselor in the First Presidency. You can find this in BYU Studies Quarterly, Volume 10, Number 1, pages 1 through 3. This is a fascinating interview with him. This is the President Dyer that did all the stuff with the lands here in Missouri. He helped purchase Spring Hill at Anamonde-Amon. He beautified Far West, and just like all these things. So here the question is asked, will there be a formal education system under the law of consecration, and what might it be like? How would one envision or describe it? The answer: in this regard, I suppose many have heard me talk about the city of the New Jerusalem and its temple complex composed of 24 temples. Of course, he's talking about the temple complex here in Independence, Missouri, whenever that's built. Continuing. Buildings which will house various orders of the priesthood. This complex will no doubt be erected to serve administrative purposes in the governing of the earth during the period of the Millennium. It is to be noted that in the Platt Plan that was submitted by Oliver Cowdery and Frederick G. Williams under the direction of the prophet Joseph Smith concerning the city of Zion, there were no separate school buildings. This means, and it is suggested to you by other writings, that the schools will be in the temples. There are no separate places of worship either. So the temple becomes a house of worship, the school, and the temple. Continuing, I'm going to skip down. Now, there will be a vast broadcasting system. And by the way, I think that this is already here. This is essentially, with or without him knowing it, I think it's the internet. Now, there will be a vast broadcasting system. 3 of the temples have been noted to be the media through which the laws will go forth unto all quarters of the earth. Undoubtedly, there will be many principles and laws of the millennial reign that will be broadcast to people all over the earth, that they might conform to the same things that are being conformed to in this city. So 3 of these buildings will be dedicated to an order of priesthood that will broadcast unto the world so that all people will hear the voice at the same time. This will be a marvelous method of teaching. Okay, later on, in the family, it will be the father and the father's father who will be doing the teaching. Okay, so this is the part where careers are maybe put in jeopardy. Now, there's probably still going to be teachers, professors, researchers, but I think what is being suggested here is everything's going to become more home-centered, which is interesting because you think about the Come Follow Me program, for example. In a way, it's almost like this is kind of being implemented, at least in church and with teaching the gospel. Like you become the teacher, and you should be anyway, but there's like this more structured curriculum where you teach your children. Well, in this case, he's talking about secular education as well. So he continues, in ancient times, so what I mean is, it sounds like things are going to lean more toward like homeschooling. That's what it sounds like to me. It's speculation. You make of this what you will. In ancient times, the fathers were the instructors, meaning the patriarchal fathers. It will be the same during the millennium. And then down here he says, yes, it'll be a slow transition. So, I don't know. We may not have public schools. He did talk about education in the temples, and I don't know that New Jerusalem would be the only temple that has a 24 temple complex, because it seems like other cities were supposed to follow the same pattern. So in each city, there may be times when your kids go to school and it's at the temple and there is a teacher there or something, but maybe a lot more is taught at home through homeschooling using educational programs that is provided by, the kingdom of God, essentially. Okay, moving on. Just like this industry up here at the top, we have gambling, which would include casinos and websites and apps and, horse racing probably, unless like people just are still going to enjoy just the pure aspect of horse racing without gambling on it. So I think, I mean, I don't know. We don't know really what the laws are going to look like during the millennium. I think some people think that, oh no, it's all going to be, the commandments. It's all going to be how we live in the church. No. We've read how there's going to be a constitutional form of government. President Brigham Young said that I think he used the term something like a theocratic, like a constitutional theocratic government, where it's going to resemble like what it does right now in the United States and countries that have a constitution. Not everybody's going to have to conform to the commandments that we live by, because we do that under covenant and with our free will. So, like I said, there's probably going to be things that will naturally diminish over time, because all those who remain are, by definition, at least righteous at the terrestrial level. And so there's probably less prevalence among them when it comes to gambling. It would be really interesting to see what happens when you remove the telestial element from the earth and all you have left over is celestial and terrestrial, and how much change that by itself, like if Christ didn't come, but you just remove that population, how much change that by itself would bring to the world. I think it'd be pretty profound. Okay, after that, we have military. Now, there's no speculation there. The military for sure. There's not going to be any war. Christ is going to be the king, the literal king of the earth. There's not going to be nations like we know them now. And then, of course, we have this famous verse from Isaiah. I'm not going to read it because you already know it. I have questions about finance. And when I say finance, I'm talking about lending, loans, mortgages, things like that, because of the law of consecration. Again, It may continue into the millennium as we transition, because I don't think things will just suddenly shift in one day, but that's yet to be seen. I think capitalism is the best system that we have in this fallen world. I really do. I am definitely a capitalist, but it's not perfect, and it can be abused, and people can really get into trouble when it comes to borrowing and interest and getting into debt and things like that. Okay, next one, anything having to do with funeral services and graveyards and things like that. I'm just going to zero in on this. This is new. I just added this one to my spreadsheet. I had it elsewhere, I think. Yeah, I had it somewhere else, but I brought it over here. Doctrine and Covenants 101, 29 verses 29 to 31. And there shall be no sorrow, because there is no death. So that's kind of a important requirement, or something that has to happen first before you can have a funeral, right? Verse 30, in that day an infant shall not die until he is old, and his life shall be as the age of a tree. And when he dies, he shall not sleep, that is to say, in the earth, so no graves, but shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye, and shall be caught up, and his rest shall be glorious. So I'm looking forward to that. I would really rather not die the traditional way. I'd rather just change in the twinkling of an eye from mortality to being resurrected. Law enforcement. I tend to think that there is going to be some form of law enforcement, but it's just not going to need all the techniques and tools and training that it does right now. Because again, by definition, I think probably most people that commit like crimes that require force are probably living a telestial law in that moment. I mean, I don't know. I know that there are good people that go to jail, get arrested, stuff happens. But because you take that rougher element, off of this earth, I think that it may be more just like fines, if anything. There has to be law enforcement, but I don't think there's going to be like the type of stuff that you see right now, violence and arrests, like with handcuffs and things like that. Okay, now a new one that I've added is manufacturing. I've got some questions about this, but let's go ahead and read what I got. So let's first go to, no, I'm just going to read it from the spreadsheet. Let's go to Isaiah 65 verses 17 through 23. And I'm actually just going to focus in on verse 22. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree are, the days of my people, and mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. I wanted to see what it said in the Institute Student Manual for that. Isaiah 65, 17 through 25 refers to the millennium. People living then will have no desire for things to be as they once were. No kidding. The old earth, in fact, shall not be remembered nor come to mind, quote unquote. See verse 17. Everything will be gloriously new. Sorrow will cease. Children will not die in infancy. Homes will be built, and fruit trees and gardens planted and enjoyed. No one shall drive others from their lands as the saints were driven in the early days of this dispensation. So it seems like that's what's being referred to when it says they shall not build and another inhabit. So for example, you think about the saints that lived here in Jackson County. I mean, to this day, you go to historic downtown Independence, and across from the courthouse on the west side, you have the Gilbert and Whitney Company store. Somebody, it's gone from owner to owner, but the current owners, I think it's them that restored the store to look somewhat like how it once looked when it was first built. But that's something that was built and now somebody else is inhabiting it. You think about the Saints being driven from Jackson County, being driven from Missouri, Illinois, so on and so forth. So I would tend to agree. With what it's saying here, because that makes sense. I do wonder, though, if when you take all these phrases together, they shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. Mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. I wonder if there might be another layer where this is referring to doing your own stuff, like building your own house, repairing your own house, planting your own food, maybe having small business, right? And so at this point, we're talking about manufacturing, but later on, we're going to talk about real estate, building and another not inhabiting. That kind of sounds like rent if you rent out a house. We'll get to that in just a minute. Doctrine and Covenants 42, 39 to 40. For it shall come to pass that which I spake by the mouths of my prophets shall be fulfilled. For I will consecrate of the riches of those who embrace my gospel among the Gentiles unto the poor of my people who are the house of Israel. And again, thou shalt not be proud in thy heart. Let all thy garments be plain, in their beauty, the beauty of the work of thine own hands. So it sounds like making your own clothes, making your own whatever, things that you wear, jewelry maybe. Doctrine and Covenants 101, 27. And in that day, whatsoever any man shall ask, it shall be given unto him. Now, I wanted to know exactly what that meant, but nothing explained what that meant exactly. It could be spiritual in nature, like because we'll be living in a higher, holier way on like a different spiritual plane, essentially, because the entire earth will have leveled up spiritually. Maybe it has more to do with that, understanding the mysteries of God, understanding new doctrine. Again, Elder Bruce R. McConkie said there's going to be new doctrine that's revealed. We're going to have scripture that we didn't have access to before. We're going to be interacting with resurrected saints. So there's probably going to be a lot of new spiritual concepts. So maybe it has to do with that. But I can't help but to think about technology and how it's progressing. So if you've ever seen Star Trek, this one is Star Trek: The Next Generation, and that's a Klingon. They have this amazing technology where they have these devices called replicators. So you have one in your quarters if you're like on the ship, and you just go to it and tell the computer what you want to eat. And it can synthesize it using, I guess, whatever molecules it has available to it. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but you can ask for anything, any temperature. And they credit the replicator, the invention of the replicator, as being the reason in the Star Trek universe that poverty was abolished, hunger and poverty, because now they have this way of, replicating whatever you want. And it's not just food. It can be clothes and whatever you need. I think there's restrictions. I don't think you can do weapons unless you like override the system. But, you have to wonder if this is something that could actually be possible, or I don't know. We still have another 1,000 years to go. And then a little bit after that until the earth becomes celestial. And technology has been advancing very quickly. Even just since I started my channel, we now have these chatbots. I remember when I first heard somebody talking about ChatGPT, I was watching like a YouTube video, and it was like a Christian woman from another Christian church, and she was like worried about the implications and thinking that it was evil and had something to do with the Antichrist, of course. But I mean, I started my channel back in August of 2021. And since that time, we have this amazing technology that is very, very useful. And I feel like it's only getting better by the day. We do have to be careful with it. Elder Gong has been talking about how we need to be careful with AI and how we use it, especially when it comes to spiritual matters, because it does not have the spirit. It should not write your talks. Recently, we've talked about not using AI to create images of Christ and God the Father. At least that's what the church officially is not going to do. But I think it's a good idea for us not to do that either. That's why I've changed up my thumbnails. But the point is, that's one example of just something that happened that's so recent, and it's made a lot of advancements since that time, since it was first introduced. So I wouldn't be surprised if we too develop amazing technology like this. And literally in that day, whatsoever any man shall ask, it shall be given unto him. So I don't know. We have this from Elder George Q. Cannon, Quorum of the 12 Apostles. I found this in Journal of Discourses. Okay, he says, we have factories that can make straw hats, straw bonnets, and everything of this kind. We have good tanners and shoe shops and harness shops. We have a great many manufactories. Is that manufactories? Manufactories in our territory that should be fostered by use as a people. We should guard against luxury and extravagance and use that which is manufactured at home. Now, I know in this period of church history, when the saints were just settling in to Utah, so this was 1872, I know that I generally know that there was a concern about like trying to live the law of consecration and not being influenced by outside worldliness, maybe economic forces, and being self-sufficient and, making your own stuff. So here, I think he might be talking about the church as a whole in Utah, in the Intermountain West, producing their own goods and being self-sufficient. But there's a lot to suggest that beyond that you should make your own things, ideally, that's like the ideal. And so again, that would impact manufacturing, because if you're making your own shirts or hats, then that's, one more shirt or hat that a company is not selling to you. It decreases the demand. There is more though. Let's see. We have Joseph F. Smith. At this time, he was in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Let's see. You have him right here. He says, we should be prepared not only to manufacture our own wearing apparel, but also to make all our mechanical and agricultural implements, our household furniture, our building materials, our wagons, carriages, and equipment, with all that is necessary for the righteous and legitimate use of man, that when Babylon shall fall, we may be prepared for it, and not be found among those who shall wail and lament because no man buyeth her merchandise anymore. From Revelation 18:11. So it's like, oh no, we're good. We are already doing everything to support ourselves. So we don't need them. Not like that though. That sounds prideful. Next paragraph. I see some of the sisters wearing fine hats trimmed with silk ribbon, also silk shawls, dresses, neckties, etc., which are of their own production and make. This is as it should be, the beauty of the work of their own hands, quote unquote. Quoting Doctrine and Covenants 42, verse 40. So the general feel I get from that is being self-sufficient, both at the family level, possibly having a family business. In fact, President Oaks touched on that in his general conference talk. He talked about family business and how it used to be that a family would work together as a single economic unit. When you go into your family history, I'm sure yours is pretty similar to mine, at least down one of your lines, where a lot of people back in the day, they had a lot of children, and yeah, you had like a family farm. Farmers, ranchers, homesteads, or maybe like you lived in the city and you had a family business or something like that. And I think that's good. President Oak seems to be, telling us that that's a lost thing and that we should try and bring that back where we can. It teaches children discipline and gives them real experience and so forth. And then we have this from Elder Bruce R. McConkie, Mormon Doctrine, 2nd edition, pages 496 to 497. He's talking about the millennium. I just want to read this part. Crops will be planted, harvested, and eaten. Industries will be expanded. So he says industries will be expanded, which I guess could apply to all these different job types and industries that I'm talking about, including manufacturing. But maybe in ways that we don't think. Maybe like our wealth can go so far in ways that we don't think, and while still adhering to the principles of consecration, the law of consecration. Okay, phlebotomists, and other people that work with blood. Let's just quickly read this here. So, implicit in this pronouncement is the fact that, this is Bruce R. McConkie, the Millennial Messiah, is the fact that man in all forms of life will be vegetarians in the coming day. The eating of meat will cease because, for one thing, death as we know it ceases. There will be no shedding of blood because man and beast are changed, quickened, and blood no longer flows in their veins. Yeah, makes sense. You can't shed blood if there is no blood. If there is no blood, which I'm looking forward to that. I'm not a big fan of blood. And then the last one I have here is real estate. I don't know that would go away, but I think it's going to look dramatically different. Again, there's probably going to be some kind of transition period. It's not like the entire world will be expected to live the law of consecration when it comes to their property. I don't think. Maybe it's just going to be among church members, because it was that you would receive, I think it was like you would receive a deed from the bishop for your property, and you'd be a steward over that property. And so as far as like acquiring new property, or if you want to move, it seems like the bishop of that area would be involved. And I don't even know what that would look like. There would still probably be a need for inspectors to make sure that the home is safe. It's like somewhere that you want to move. But, we talked about finance earlier. I don't know that that's going to come into play when it comes to appraising houses and their value, and, doing this and that so that your home sells at a higher value in the future. You invest in your home. It's a good portion of your wealth is tied up in the value of your home. I don't think we're going to be playing that game during the millennium, at least not later on. Maybe in the beginning a little bit, but later on, I'm not so sure. So you see how that could potentially affect real estate. Would there still be real estate agents that would help you find a house? I don't know. Would you need them? Because one of the reasons why we need real estate agents and lawyers and people that advocate for you is so that you don't get into nasty disagreements with other people that you're doing business with. It helps keep everything honest and legal. And if somebody you're engaging with somebody that's devious and they don't care about you, these people can watch out for you and they know what the rules are and they can say, no, don't do that. This person is supposed to do that. I would not advise you to do this because, they're experts. But if everybody is generally honest, there may not be so much of a need for some of the things that they do. And I tend to think that beyond real estate, beyond law, I tend to think that there's going to be less red tape and guardrails that are mostly designed to guard against bad actors, people that take advantage of the system, people that are not honest. There probably still would be some, because even if everybody was honest and pure in heart and they meant no wrong toward anybody, people can still make mistakes. So you might still need lawyers, real estate agents to help you not make honest mistakes, but there may not be so much of a need to guard you against bad actors. Okay. And then the last thing that I want to share, and this is my last item, is real estate. The last quote that I want to share is from, this is Elder George Q. Cannon. It's in this same discourse, but we're going to scroll up here. Okay, he says, "The time must come when we must obey that which has been revealed to us as the Order of Enoch, when there shall be no rich and no poor among the Latter-day Saints, when wealth will not be a temptation, when every man will love his neighbor as he does himself, when every man and woman will labor for the good of all as much as for self. That day must come, and we may as well prepare our hearts for it, brethren. For as wealth increases, I see more and more a necessity for the institution of such an order." I like this sentence right here. And I just told you, I am a capitalist. I'm all about improving your circumstances and your quality of life. I'm for it. I am for it. But there is this ugly reality that rears its ugly head. As wealth increases, luxury and extravagance have more power over us. And we've talked about this a number of times on the channel. I feel like a lot of times when people talk about supporting their families, quote unquote, or they're in need of assistance, quote unquote, they're talking about luxuries that they already have and extravagance. They don't want to give up their comforts. And that's between you, the Lord, the bishop, if you're going to Bishop's Storehouse, if you're tapping into that. But I feel like even the poorest among us, I'm pretty sure most people, like virtually anyone you meet, has a smartphone, for example. And that by itself is an incredible power and a tool. I know that there are people that are homeless. I know that. But just as a civilization, a human civilization, I don't think that we've ever had it better than we do now, as far as the comforts of life go. Even if you are poor, there are people in the 1800s, for example, George Q. Cannon, that would probably do anything. Of course, he wouldn't do anything, but would do anything to live in a poor person's house today with computers, televisions, heating, cooling, or even without heating and cooling, reliable plumbing. We have it good, you guys. Okay. The necessity for such an order is very great. And God, undoubtedly, in his own time and way, will inspire his servant to introduce it among the people. I do not wish to foreshadow when it will be done or what the circumstances will be that will call it forth, for this is not my province, but I feel led to talk upon it and to prepare my own heart and to seek, with all the faith and influence I have, to prepare the hearts of my brethren and sisters for the introduction of this order. It will doubtless be a time of trial and will be attended by many things that will test our feelings. But When we view the great results that will follow its introduction and its perfect establishment upon the earth, we should be filled with thanksgiving and praise that God has devised a scheme of this kind. So, when we read in the scriptures and we read about peoples who have achieved this level of society and civilization where you're living the law of consecration in its fullness, think about 4th Nephi, in the Nephites after Christ came, it says that they all became rich together. And I don't think that we've ever seen this in history, like in history outside of these groups, world history, secular history. I don't think there's any other people that have achieved that. So we don't really know what it looks like other than how it's described in the scriptures, but that it is possible. And maybe we'd be amazed just how rich everybody will get if we all live in this way. So like you said, at first, there may be things that test our feelings. It might be difficult because, if you have a lot right now, you might be asked to give some of that up and for things to be equalized. And I know that we kind of like, that's kind of a hard thing when we think about it. But given enough time, everything would work to your own benefit as well as your community and everybody else. That's what I believe. So I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of stuff myself, but I could see it being hard if I was asked to like not have so much of this or give up that. But I think just like everything else that God has designed, he knows how to have a happy people, both spiritually and temporally. He knows better. It's interesting because we'll just end with this. It's interesting because we have people like Elon Musk right now who says that work is going to be optional because of AI. And I don't know if that's true. I think there's probably still going to be jobs for sure. This is something that is just like, it's so hard to predict. There's always people in the past that have tried to predict the future, and sometimes they're just way off. It's one of those things where you just have to wait and see. But let's say that he's right. Let's say that work will be optional. Our lives could become so great because then we can actually focus on things that actually matter. We can focus more on spiritual things. We can focus on art. We can give all the mundane tasks and stuff, give it to the computers. And of course, there would be people that would maintain those systems and somehow keep them under control. Of course, I don't know, maybe there won't be. No, I'm not going to say that. I think that there will be AI in the millennium, but I think it's going to be very well regulated by Christ. Maybe it's no accident that AI is rising the way that it is, and unless Christ came, maybe it would become a problem for our species, and so in that sense, he's going to like save us from our own, the creation of our own hands. But maybe he'll flip it to where it becomes this like very, very powerful tool. And then all of us can have much higher and much nobler careers. The things that we're talking about are wild. I'm telling you right now, the millennium is going to be wild. It is going to be wild, you guys. The continents are coming together. We're not going to have blood in our veins. There's going to be changes to the economy and the way that we do things. The church is going to be much, much bigger than it is now. It is good. We're not even going to recognize it. And like the Isaiah scripture says, we're not going to think about the old world. We're not even going to think about it because the new world is going to be so good. So if you're distraught about any of these jobs potentially going away, or changing significantly, don't. You know, you hear this all the time when you watch like videos about AI where people they draw the parallel between what's happening now with AI, for example, in the Industrial Revolution, how there's all these jobs that went away. But do you really want to go back to those kind of jobs? There was one person that used the example of there was a job where you'd have somebody that would like throw rocks at your window, like little pebbles at your window at a certain time to wake you up in the morning. It was like a human being would walk the streets and act like an alarm clock for would act like an alarm clock for you. Or do you want to go back to like washing clothes like on those like laundry boards, doing it by hand? So whether it's AI or not, the Millennium is going to be amazing, and we're not going to look back. We're going to look back the same way that you look back at, I don't know, let's not say the 80s, because I do want to go back to the 80s. I want to go back to the 80s and the 90s, but not with technology. Okay, enough. I'm just rambling. Let's end it here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys later.